It's good to see all of you this morning, and I'd like to welcome all who are joining us online. I thank God for all of you. It's a great honor. It's also a great privilege and a great responsibility to preach the Word of God this morning. The passage before us is in Ephesians chapter 6, verses 1 through 9. It is about commands that Paul has issued concerning authority. In this passage, Paul tells me to obey authority, human authority, like it or not. I will go through this passage a verse at a time. I hope you better understand it when I'm finished. Paul teaches respect for authority when he commands children to obey their parents, fathers to not exasperate their children, and slaves to obey their masters. In verse 1 of chapter 6, Paul says, "Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right." In the Ten Commandments, Moses said, "Children, honor your parents in the Lord, for this is right." Children, obey your fathers. My dad, on the other hand, frequented a beer joint. He took me there when I was as young as 7 years old. But by the time I was 14 or 15, Mom told me not to go there anymore. But I did, disobeying and dishonoring my mother. Interestingly, my mom and dad took all of their kids to church every Sunday morning. I'm grateful to them for that. But I had 7 siblings, 7 brothers and sisters, and I think it overwhelmed my dad. He began drinking quite heavily 6 days a week, not on Sunday. He would come home late many weeknights. He would get off work at 4, go to the bar, and many evenings he would come home late while the dinner got cold and Mom got hot. But he got sober when he was 62 years old, and he lived to be 89 and never drank again. My dad told me he hoped others could benefit from his alcoholism, from his mistakes. So I share this with you. But on the other hand, my mom was a teetotaler and very strict. Children, obey your mothers. I know it's not easy, so God sweetens the pot so that it may turn out well for you. Long-term gain over short-term pain, young people. You've heard that before. It's like waiting to get a driver's license instead of driving without one and getting pulled over. Or like waiting till Christmas morning to open your presents because Mom and Dad said so. The Father further sweetens the pot so that you may live long on the earth. Young people, you may have learned that your ancestors only lived to be about 40. No, most of them lived into their 60s and older. A high death rate for infants in previous generations caused the average lifespan to be lower. which is calculated roughly by adding the ages of all those who lived and dividing it into the number of people who lived. Before modern medicine, many children died in childbirth. But as far back as Moses, children had been promised that if they would honor their parents and obey their parents, they would live long on the earth. I was immersed on a Saturday evening when I was 19, but still living at home. I told my parents who were in bed. My mom told me to go to bed. My dad got up, lit a cigarette, and opened a can of beer before he said anything. Dad was not perfect, but I wanted to be like him. Fathers, pay attention to that, because your children are learning to respect authority from you, and vice versa. In my case, I thought my mother hated me because she was so strict. I thought my father loved me. I had it exactly backwards as I was learning to disrespect authority. Paul is teaching respect for authority again in verse 4. The second commandment about obeying authority is, fathers, do not exasperate your children. My father and I were arguing of all things about calling a priest father. And he said, well, who's your father, me or God? And I replied, are you being ignorant on purpose? Well, I accept full responsibility for that disrespectful statement. I did not honor my father at the time. Oh, it's funny now, but it wasn't then. I did not honor him. He provoked me, but I dishonored him. It's a vicious cycle. We were both wrong, but me more than Dad. My father provoked me when I was younger, when his drinking was more important than eating dinner with his family. He provoked me when he came home late at night and fought with Mom. They threw things at each other. I used to cry myself to sleep. Or is Paul only talking about fathers who beat their children or abandon them? No. Paul is talking about fathers who are morally inconsistent and don't care. That was Dad as a father. That was me as a father. Paul told me to obey my heavenly Father, like it or not. I provoked my own daughters to tears. I spent a month at Valley Hope Rehab, and on the last Saturday night that I was there, they invited my wife and daughters and talked to them about how terrible alcoholism was. And my daughters began bawling. I was angry because they made my children cry. But I was the one who made them cry. I had been a largely absentee father who provoked my daughters to look elsewhere for direction and security. It's like telling a toddler to assemble her own toys without the instructions and without any help. I got hired by Church's Fried Chicken because I was a neighbor of the owner. I had never worked fast food before. Few instructions, no help. I didn't last a week. Paul commands children to obey their parents, fathers to not exasperate their children, and thirdly, slaves to obey their masters. Paul commands slaves to be obedient to their masters, even though slavery is immoral. Why would he do this? Well, Paul also wrote a letter to a slave owner named Philemon, where he urged Philemon to free his slave. It took 1,800 years for culture to catch up with Paul. Governments did not declare white ownership of slaves illegal until the 19th century, when it became illegal in parts of the British Empire, in France, Brazil, and the United States. On the other hand, Paul sought the emancipation of slaves one master at a time. Slaves have been treated with prejudice and hatred for centuries. You don't forget something like that. You don't get over it. I believe those who overcome the injustice they were born with will receive a reward from the Lord on the last day. Lee Hawkins has written a book called I Am Nobody's Slave, describing the horrific bigotry he endured as a young child. His father had been horribly mistreated, and his mind was poisoned. His son, Lee, endured severe beatings for even speaking to people whom his father considered bigots. This was not Lee's fault, nor was it his father's fault. I applaud those who have endured bigotry and kept their faith. Laws have not led to the acceptance and fairness of slaves. God has allowed slavery to endure since Genesis chapter 9, verses 25 through 27. Today it still exists largely and illegally in parts of Africa. But some Christians have applied verses 5 through 9 to their jobs. So I will too. I'd like to read verses 5 through 9, Ephesians chapter 6. Slaves, be obedient to those who are your masters, according to the flesh, with fear and trembling, in the sincerity of your heart, as to Christ, not by way of eye service, as people pleasers, but as slaves of Christ, doing the will of God from the heart. With good will render service as to the Lord, and not to people, knowing that whatever good thing each one does, he will receive this back from the Lord, whether slave or free. And masters, do the same things to them, and give up threatening, knowing that both their master and yours is in heaven, and there is no partiality with him. A boss asked me to work on a Saturday just before Kathleen and I got married, and we needed to go to Joplin. I didn't want to work. I'd already given my 2 weeks' notice, but he practically begged me. I not only worked, I boxed more packages of hardware than anyone else. But another time, I made a few bucks while collecting unemployment. They wanted to hire me, but I made excuses why I couldn't take the job. I lied to keep collecting unemployment benefits. So I was blessed for working that Saturday. I was not blessed when I lied to continue drawing unemployment. I received nothing good from the Lord for lying. On the other hand, Kathleen's first boss used to demean and threaten her. We prayed about it and agreed that she should quit. God provided a better job for her. But a slave couldn't quit. And most people can't quit. In my case, I've had lots of jobs and quit lots of jobs. I always blamed my supervisor, but it was my attitude toward authority. Once I got fired from a job, I was denied unemployment benefits, but appealed. I lied to a judge about why I got fired. He knew I was lying. I still didn't get benefits, and now I was also a liar. I didn't accept responsibility and had a strained relationship with a lot of people, including Jesus. He didn't trust me either. I was resisting authority. That's what employers and employees do regularly when they disregard Paul's commands concerning authority. So, Paul teaches respect for authority when he commands children to obey their parents, fathers to not exasperate their children, and slaves to obey their masters. God has authority over parents, children, supervisors, employees, masters, and slaves. Paul tells all of them to obey authority, like it or not. My attitude toward human authority is my attitude toward Christ's authority. When I was 18, a high school teacher caught me smoking on school grounds. He scolded me for smoking on school property. I burned with anger. I was of legal age. It was my right. So who was he? So what authority figures was I scorning? A teacher? A rule? My parents who warned me about smoking on school property? The fact that I knew better? I was scorning the authority of Christ. I disrespected authority another time when I shoplifted a Hostess cherry pie. I was 13. The store owner was a family friend. I left my mom and sisters who were in line, found the pies, and put one, instead of in my coat pocket, in my crotch. The store owner said, "What's in your coat pocket there?" I turned my pockets inside out. Mom paid for the food, and we left. I ate the pie in secret. Now I have nothing to show for it. I almost got caught by my mom and the store owner. I can't say it was worth it. I have regretted it for 52 years. A 15-cent pie. I end as I began. All must submit to authority, like it or not. Christ has the authority to command believers to make disciples out of others, out of unbelievers, and baptize them. I hope you more fully understand Christ's authority. I preached a verse at a time. It has been a great honor and privilege. Paul makes it clear in Ephesians 6, 1 through 9 about authority. Baptism, Christ has the authority to command baptism, but baptism loses its shine if we don't go on obeying all that Christ has commanded. One thing he has commanded is to obey human authority. We will sing a verse as you ponder what that means for you. I hope you better understand as we sing. I leaned over to her while they were singing the first verse, and I said to her, if they sing another verse, I'm going forward. Well, they did, and I submitted to Jesus' authority that night. That's the invitation this morning. You must obey Christ to be saved. If you have repented and obeyed Christ in baptism, you need to continue to obey human authority as well. I didn't understand that when I got baptized. I just didn't want to go to hell. That's a good reason. That's a good enough reason. Will you accept all authority and escape eternal damnation? That question is for you and for anyone within the sound of my voice.